When people talk about the Israel-Palestine war and conflict, people who are anti-Israel will talk about the Nakba, the displacement of all the Arabs that occurred in 1948. And they sort of say this is the original sin of Israel, and it justifies everything, all the horrendous crimes that were committed on the Arab side, past and present. The great irony, of course, is that the hatred of the Jews did not start in this region in 1948. No. The attempts to try and kill the Jews and dismantle any attempt at self-determination occurred way before that, started way before that in this territory. So it's obviously a nonsense. But I want to show you this clip of Ben Shapiro debunking head-on this myth that this is the cause of the conflict, because it is a pervasive myth. And we need to set the record straight. So have a listen to Ben talking about this.
Myth number 3. Israel expelled all Palestinian Arabs from British Mandate Palestine. This is, again, a lie. Israel's founding documents asked Arabs to stay. Israel's Declaration of Independence, in the middle of an ongoing war with Arab nations, reads, quote, "We appeal, in the very midst of the onslaught launched against us now for months, to the Arab inhabitants of the State of Israel to preserve peace and participate in the upbuilding of the state on the basis of full and equal citizenship and due representation in all its provisional and permanent institutions." Debate has raged for decades over how many Arabs left the nascent State of Israel thanks to expulsion, and how many left because they were told to leave by their own leaders. An estimated 250,000 to 300,000 refugees left before their homes were even in a war zone.
We didn't compel them to leave. They left on their own will, or rather on the will of the Arab leaders, who advised them even before trouble started.
The collapse of Arab society during the 1947-48 war, leaving many Arabs without a means of support, has been well documented.
Israel will do everything in its power to help the resettlement of these refugees by paying compensation and by other means.
Hundreds of thousands of these refugees ended up in the West Bank and Gaza, which remained Arab territory until 1967. Furthermore, Arab nations refused to take in hundreds of thousands of Arabs, turning their co-religionists into refugees who have maintained that status for literally decades, a situation unparalleled in human history. Fully 62% of such refugees live outside the West Bank and Gaza Strip, according to the UNRWA. Meanwhile, Israel, tiny Israel, took in over 800,000 Jews expelled from Arab land between 1948 and 1951 and never asked for land to be returned to those Jews. Myth number 4.
So that's the end of Ben going through this whole list of myths. But that's the end of the part 3 about the displacement being the cause. It is such nonsense. The biggest key point that also needs to be made is that the displacement occurred when you had Jews and Arabs living in this small sliver of land, and the UN said, right, we've got Jews living there, we've got Arabs living there, the Jewish people are entitled to a state, they're entitled to self-determination in their ancient homeland. They're the only people that have ever had a sovereign state there. They were kicked out of it 2,000 years ago, but we recognize there are Arabs living there as well. And by the way, the Jews that were living in this land that had returned en masse, they did so by purchasing land. It was all done legally, okay? So then what happens is you have the UN saying, let's partition the land and we'll create 2 states, a Jewish state and an Arab state. And the Arabs, or the leadership of the Arabs in the region and the surrounding Arab countries said, no, we won't tolerate that. We won't accept that. So if the original sin is the displacement, why did they attack Israel and call for its destruction before the displacement occurred? The displacement occurred actually when they decided they want to kill the Jewish state, to kill the Jews, to drive them all into the sea. And the displacement occurred during that war, when Israel had to fight the war and many Arabs fled. Most of them actually, it seems, were fleeing because they were told by Arab leadership. Mossab Hassan Youssef himself, the son of a Hamas co-founder and leader, said his grandmother was told by the Arab leadership, flee, let us kill the Jews, and you can come back. And come back to a Judenrein, a Jewish-free land. But of course that didn't happen. So if Israel's original sin is simply doing what we need to do to survive, if our original sin is simply existing, not the displacement, because the displacement occurred after the genocidal war against the Jews began, then frankly, we can see very clearly that it is not about a legitimate grievance. It never was. on the side of the quote-unquote Palestinians, who only created such a term and an identity in order to get rid of Israel, because they'd be happy to be part of a greater Arab conglomerate, a greater Arab, another nation, empire, whatever. The Grand Mufti, the first Palestinian Arab leader, he was happy to be part of southern Syria. If they would have won, the Arabs would have won in 48, God forbid, they would have divided the land into Jordan and Syria, Lebanon. There'd be no free Palestine. So it's all a nonsense. It's nonsense. And quite frankly, at the end of the day, this is the Jewish people's national, historic, legal, God-given land, full stop. And we are perfectly happy for non-Jewish people to live among us. No issue with that at all. You even had that in ancient Israel. You had non-Jews living among them, but you have to be peaceful and cooperative, as you would expect in any society. And if you're going to try and undermine our existence, well, we shouldn't tolerate that. And if you don't like that, if you think that's a moral outrage, well, frankly, your double standards are clear. And we don't really have much more to say than that. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.